Hello, everyone. This is Dan Farisi, Editor-in-Chief of Commercial Integrator, and welcome to AV Plus, the podcast for the commercial AV integration industry. This week, we have an illuminating discussion with the Avnu Alliance talking about Milan certification. As always, please like and subscribe to our YouTube page, and please subscribe to the AV Plus podcast on Apple and on Spotify. Happy to be joined this morning by Henning Kaltheuner, Head of Market Intelligence, D&B Audiotechnik, and Richard Bugg, Digital Products Solutions Architect with Meyer Sound. Both of them are part of the Avnu Alliance, and they work on the Milan initiative. Thanks so much for joining me, Henning and Richard.
Good morning, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
So there's a lot to talk about with the Avnu Alliance and the Milan initiative. I've been following Milan, as you know, for years, and I'm always excited to find out the latest iterations and the latest developments. There's much to talk about this morning. Let's start with what is new with Milan. I know a lot of the trade show gatherings, especially pre-COVID, we were always getting updates about the latest developments from Avnu and Milan. For those who have not been following the latest updates, what's new?
So what is new? We have worked a lot on making membership to Avnu Alliance for the Milan manufacturers easier. We have a membership level called associate membership, which is at a much lower cost than in the past. And that's a part of our efforts to make Milan easier, more affordable, and more accessible, especially also to smaller manufacturers, which are so important for our industry. They must be a part of an initiative that deals with networking. And Richard, please.
And another thing that's come along is we've got a few more manufacturers doing things. And one of the newest areas that we've made progress in is there's now a manufacturer that's offering kind of a turnkey Milan module. So we developed a program to allow certification of a module that you would install into your device to make this more accessible to a broader range of manufacturers who may not have in-house resources to be able to design a sophisticated network card. So we've got a certification program that takes care of that, and we have a manufacturer that's pushed out a module that's available for that.
Very exciting stuff. So let's also talk about the new certification program that has been rolled out for Milan. This seems to be one of the most important stories going on with Avnu Alliance right now. I'd like to know all about this new certification program.
So Henning, I'll let you take the lead on this.
Thanks. So basically, it's important to understand why certification. Milan is based on open IEEE TSN standards. And open standards are a great thing because they are available to everybody, and they are kind of commonly shared amongst stakeholders in the industry. But the tricky thing about open standards is that once they are implemented, it needs to be verified that they have been implemented correctly, so that devices on the one hand work properly, and they also properly interoperate with devices from other manufacturers. So from our perspective, open standards only work with a checking process, and that's what certification does, where a manufacturer can verify that his device is actually compatible and complying to the specifications. So in the past, this certification process at Avnu Alliance was perceived by quite some manufacturers as pretty lengthy and rather cumbersome here and there. And we thought that it must be critical for us within the Milan initiative to improve on this. So we have designed a completely new certification process, a new process for testing, and a new process for actually getting formally a device registered as certified.
I might expand on that just a tiny bit. When the Avnu Alliance got started, all of the IEEE standards were very fresh, very new. And as manufacturers, we had no history to fall back on. We didn't have the experience. So the testing that we did was extremely detailed, and a lot of it could actually be classed as design validation. You know, are we even going down the right pathway, let alone how far down the path we've gone? We now have collectively quite a few years of experience dealing not only with designing the devices and certifying them, but also in feedback from our users and the rest. So we were able to kind of optimize the certification program. What are the areas that are most likely to be misinterpreted in the specs? You know, the English language is wonderful for the amount of ambiguity it contains, and the specs are written in English. As well as what things are truly important for shows and the rest. So we came out with a Milan Advanced Certification Program as a way of doing two things. One was to optimize the testing so that it could be automated as much as possible. Machines never get bored running tests, so it's happy to do the same test over and over again, as well as providing the basis of automatic checking and updating of things. So we're very excited about it. There was a tremendous amount of work that went in. The Avnu Alliance is run by a lot of volunteers on the organization, and quite a few people put in a very big effort to push this out in such a short time.
As you mentioned, the Avnu Alliance is made up of a number of different members working across competitive lines for the betterment of the industry, the betterment of the technology, and the interest of standards. Can you just explain in the abstract why certification is important, why manufacturers should look towards certification and uniformity, kind of the benefit in a more abstract sense?
Sure.
Let's say it like this. If there was no certification, and manufacturers would be allowed or enabled to call their device a Milan device just because they believe they have implemented something that's up to the standards, this would cause a terrible situation in the market where a lot of questions would come up about why does this not work with this other device, or why do I have an issue here, and so on. And please imagine if there are many hundred different products in the market from many manufacturers, what kind of situation that would create. So it's really about checking that everything is up to standards and everything is properly implemented. That's, from our point of view, the only way to guarantee the reliability of an open standard actually working in the market. So this is for the manufacturer, but also for the end customer. We want that when you see a Milan logo on a device, and you are only allowed to print that logo there when your device is certified, that a user can trust in, yes, this works up to the standards and the specifications.
You know, as someone who's worked frontline technical support for very complicated devices for quite a few years, I always hated to be in the spot where I had to point the finger at a different device, because as an end user in that experience, I've gone to a manufacturer and said, hey, I'm having a problem with this. And they say, oh, well, no, it's the other guy. And you go to the other guy and they say, oh, it's not my problem. So all of us, you know, Henning, myself, everybody else involved in Avnu at this level, we've all been users. We've all been in these positions before and the rest. And so it was obvious to us that there needed to be some kind of authority that could step in and say, yes, this is all done correctly. Go look and see if you've got a broken wire, or no, this device needs to modify something. And once it gets modified, it can then get certified, and the end user can look for the Milan logo on the device and know that some very clever people have looked at it and determined that it actually will connect to each other and do something useful.
I think that's an important point to underscore as well. I mean, you guys aren't coming up with these ideas in some ivory tower separated from the industry. You've worked in the trenches, you've worked in the industry for years and decades, and you know exactly what's necessary to make systems work, make products interoperate. So you have a real in the trenches sense of why this is beneficial and why it will serve the interests of the industry. So tell me a bit about a test tool. I was told that a test tool is part of this whole equation. So tell me about it.
Henning?
A main idea that we had was that manufacturers should be able to verify their implementations by themselves before they go to a test lab. That's a very important piece because TSN is not a trivial technology to implement. There are lots of bells and whistles in the protocols and a lot of details to take care of. So in the past, there was a process where a manufacturer developed something and then he sent his product to US and it was tested in one certain laboratory. And if then a fault was found, it became rather complicated. Either a technician was traveling over there and trying to fix it or look at it, or the product was sent back in a cumbersome process. And you can imagine how lengthy and complicated this could become over several iterations. So one important target was to have a test kit that actually works in-house at a manufacturer and is affordable. So it's basically a computer and another computer that controls this computer. And there's a test program running. And this test program has been designed by Avnu Alliance. And now a device can be attached here, and then the test routines will run through and immediately in detail tell the test engineer, okay, this has passed, hey, wait a moment, here's a little problem. And by providing this, the manufacturer can actually check that his device is up to the certification specification before he even enters a test lab and spends money for that process. So the final test run at a test lab, and we have contracted some new test labs, will be a very short and slim process, which is a huge difference to the past.
Excellent.
So for those of you who started in the previous century, like I did, when you talk about a tool, usually it's some kind of physical mechanical device. What we're talking about with the advanced certification test tool that we offer from Avnu, it's actually very much the 21st century. So there is a little bit of hardware. There's a Linux box that runs. There's a specialized bit of hardware that can do time stamping of packets that come in and sample those. And then the critical part of the test tool is actually its smarts, as it were. And this is the computer program that's running inside that does the automated testing and generates the reports and the rest. So these two things taken together, you know, some physical hardware and the program itself, combined together to form the test tool. And of course, since part of the tool is in software, one of the exciting things about it is, as a manufacturer, if I decide that I've got some additional features on my box that extend what I'm able to do with it, I can write some little scripts that will run on the same bit of hardware that's being used to do the certification to do this additional testing. Or let's say in my development, I'm trying to do something clever and it's not passing. I can modify one of the scripts and have it provide more information in depth to help me debug and troubleshoot the situation. So it's a process that is very much of this century and what we're seeing in a number of test instruments and directions. So when we say test tool, we mean both the hardware and the software.
And on top, it even solves another topic, because it can be used in manufacturing for quality management. So that's a big topic, by the way, in the world of network devices. How does a manufacturer actually check that the network port is working correctly. That's not so trivial. And this tool can be used as a quick test for manufacturing checking as well. And the nice thing now is that it's one and the same test script being used in-house for design and R&D, for production, but as well also for the certification process.
Really powerful resource.
Yes.
So let's just talk a little bit about how the program is evolving. Now, that obviously can be the certification, which clearly has been undergoing evolution. It's reached a new level of efficiency and excellence, but also the Milan initiative, how it is evolving. What's next on the roadmap? What should people be aware of as they follow Avnu and Milan?
I have to admit that the pandemic has, of course, also caused some trouble for us as an association, because many companies were kind of slowed down and had to cut down in resources, and also the ability to not meet in person was actually an issue. We had last week our first face-to-face meeting again after almost 2 years in Boston, which was great. And but I'm quite proud to say that during this time, we nevertheless have made a lot of progress. We have kicked off this certification program, developed all the technology behind, and so on. And 2022, we expect to see a lot more of products in the market, also due to the fact that we now have a range of smaller manufacturers who joined on the basis of our new low-cost membership. And we also see that other manufacturers have started to adopt this module that is available. That makes it very easy to design a Milan device. And now with the new certification process, also get it verified in the end. So we're expecting more products to come. But of course, it's a long story, Milan, and it will slowly ramp up. So we're not changing the world overnight or something like that. That would be the wrong expectation.
One thing that that is coming as quick as we can make it happen is our current test tool does endpoint testing. So it's designed for talkers and listeners. And there's an extension that some manufacturers have to an endpoint, which they include an Ethernet bridge. Some people call it an Ethernet switch, which allows them to add additional functionality like daisy chaining or the second port for redundancy and the rest. And this requires a little bit more testing than just the end station. So we'll be finishing up on what we call the bridged end station test plan. So that will be rolling out. And since this is a software implementation part, it will run on the hardware with the tool. So that's what's in the immediate future.
Excellent. And then just one last question about certification, since that's kind of the principal topic that we've been talking about today. Suppose that I have a product that I want to be Milan certified in accordance with this new approach. How difficult a process and time-consuming a process is it for me to get my product certified? If I want to embark on this journey, how long should I expect for it to take to come to fruition?
Well, excellent question. If you've got a product that you want to push out and you're confident that it's ready to pass, what you do is you, as an Avnu member, you go to the our website and you sign up with a technical program manager who issues an ID for this particular device in the test. And this ID allows us to easily track the progress of the certification, so that if there's any communication problems between the lab that you chose and the manufacturer, or if there are any other difficulties, it's unambiguous as to what device we're talking about and where it is in the test queue. One thing that Henning touched on earlier was the fact that we now have more than one lab involved. So yeah. Avnu Alliance does not set prices or anything. These are independent test labs who make their living off of providing sophisticated tests for across a number of industries and the Ethernet side of things. So it's up to you as a user. We have a list of labs that we've qualified to conduct the tests and verified that they had the necessary test equipment to run, to execute the tests. And part of what Avnu is doing is tracking which lab you've gone to, so that if you have a problem with that lab, we can address it from the qualifying the lab point of view, should there be an issue. Or if you have a really good experience, we can also credit that lab for doing a good job. But once the test ID is issued, then you'll coordinate with the lab that's going to do the test. You'll send your product to the lab. They run the automated testing. It generates a report. You get a copy of the report so you can see that everything passed, because of course, since it's one of your devices, Dan, it's going to pass on the first attempt. And the Avnu technical program manager will also get a copy of the report. And this is a signed report that we can take a look at to make sure that everybody stays straightforward, Avnu will then issue the certification. So the lab provides the testing service and furnishes a report, and then it's up to Avnu to review the test results and to issue the certification. And then Avnu will contact you and will coordinate whether you want to be listed immediately on the site as a device that's been developed, or maybe this is part of some rollout that you have planned for either a trade show or some big event or whatever. And so you can embargo the announcement until a date that you determine. So that's, we've tried to make it as simple as possible. There's only one form to fill out. There's one contact person that you have, as opposed to kind of the ad hoc structure that developed over time back in the dawn of what we were doing with AVB certification before it became AVB TSN, and now we refer to it as TSN. So is that TMFA, too many funny acronyms?
So a simple process, but still a rigorous one, because we want Milan certification to mean something. So it's simple, absolutely, but it's rigorous.
Yes.
Is there anything that I've not asked about that either you, Henning, or you, Richard, would like to discuss? Is there anything I might have overlooked?
Well, something to add maybe of interest is that Milan is a part of the Avnu Alliance, and Avnu Alliance is also taking care of other industries than Pro AV. So another thing that is happening in parallel is that the same test tool is now developed further for TSN standards that are being used in other contexts, such as automotive and industrial context. So this test tool initiative goes beyond the Pro AV industry, even covering TSN certification for other industries. So it's a pretty big initiative we have kicked off here. That will have some relevance not only within the Pro AV industry. And in the far future, we see anyway some convergence coming up between the Pro AV way of dealing with networks and other vertical markets. So there's also a long-term future perspective behind this, which we, from an Avnu perspective, think is pretty important.
Well, thank you so much, Henning and Richard, for joining me and for giving Commercial Integrators audience an update on Avnu and on Milan. I can't wait, hopefully, to see you both, whether at ISC or at Infocom, and to hear about the latest developments and the latest certification recipients at that point. Once again, I'm so happy to have been joined by Henning Kaltheuner, Head of Market Intelligence at D&B Audiotechnik, as well as Richard Bugg, Digital Products Solutions Architect at Meyer Sound. My name is Dan Farisi. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Commercial Integrator, and we'll be back with you soon with more interesting content from commercial AV professionals. Thank you.